Welcome to your in-depth weekly astrology overview and Zodiac forecast for week commencing the 11th of August. I'm going to share some standout details to look out for to begin with. Then on screen, the event chart right at the start of the week, which always provides an influential backdrop for the whole 7 days. I'll then go through each of the days frame by frame to give a clear picture of what we can collectively expect. Please stay with me to the end. I'll go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces, which you can relate to in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. This week begins with us emerging from a powerful full moon in the sign of Aquarius. Because we have Pluto there, which is very much about the collective, and Aquarius can be about how we are connected, that is going to be something that still pours its energy into this week. But the moon has shifted into the watery feeling sign of Pisces. Now, Monday sees Mercury ending its 3-week retrograde. But Mercury retrogrades in total, the entire process, takes around about 10 weeks. And I'm going to share with you why things might not speed up quite as quickly as we'd all like. Now, we are going to see on Tuesday a wonderful conjunction between Venus and Jupiter, the two benefics, the two planets of fortune, but also the fixed star Sirius at 14 degrees in Cancer. This has rich resonance, particularly for the things that are good about Cancerian energy, about warmth, family, protectiveness, nurture. And there could be some genuine slices of fortune. I'll unpick that for you too. But we also have, through the first half of this week, two big oppositions. Mercury in an opposition with Pluto, but also a continuing clash between the two malefics, Mars and Saturn. So I need to share about that as well. Yet the two co-regents of the sign of Aquarius, the traditional Saturn and the progressive Uranus, actually forge a really strong link on Tuesday, which we can gain from. So on the screen now, I'm sharing the event chart. And you can see, as we enter into this new week at absolutely midnight, Mercury is still not quite direct, but it goes direct later on Monday. Mercury retrogrades have a reputation for causing glitches, delays, and snags, and particularly misunderstandings. What you can get with Mercury in Leo is people can be very attached to their ideas because they feel it's very much about their persona. So there can be a little bit of ego in the exchange of ideas. And that position of Mercury is opposite, you can see, Pluto. In people who have that in their natal charts, they can be very trenchant. If they have a point of view, they're keen to impose it on other people. Remember, Pluto can be about power. So we just need to be mindful of that. We still have the wonderful golden triangle between Uranus, Pluto, Saturn and Neptune, which can be progressive. But of course, Mars came into the mix last week, and you can see that Mars at 2 degrees 30 at the start of this week, still opposite Saturn and Neptune. Saturn is about resistance, Mars is about action. Mars in Libra, very much about justice and fairness, particularly around agreements and partnerships. If we are on the end of someone making demands, particularly with Mercury in that opposition with Pluto, that aren't fair, however much we've got Mercury going direct, and however much we've got the blessings of that glorious trio aligning on Tuesday, I still feel there's going to be a subtext this week where we will absolutely have to take off our rose-tinted glasses. So if you're discussing anything where you know that the other person doesn't necessarily see it the same way as you, expect it to be tense. It doesn't mean to say we can't have a breakthrough. And one of the great things about that wonderful connection on Tuesday is that it does ask us to see the best in each other. And Mercury going forwards can help us to perhaps gain a little bit of traction. It won't come out of the whole period of retrograde through the post-retrograde shadow until the 25th. So it starts this week at 14 degrees and 14, but by the 25th it gets back to 15 degrees and 34, which was the degree it was when the retrograde began in the middle of July. So patience, tact and resilience are still going to be important this week, but that doesn't mean to say we should cave in if people see things differently to us. Yes, we can be very generous of spirit, and for some people can most certainly have huge strokes of fortune. So if you are someone who is a Cancer and you have degrees from, or your birthday is from the 1st through to the 7th of July, this is a glorious opportunity to feel very, very attractive, to add a little bit of glamour to your personal identity by some kind of makeover. But all the zodiac signs can benefit from that influence. But if you would like to understand what it means in much greater detail, please click on the link within this video and you can watch my inside track of that Venus, Jupiter and Sirius conjunction, which is very rare. It hasn't happened between Venus and Jupiter since 2002, so 23 years in the sign of Cancer. Now, if you're new to my channel, it's lovely to have your company. Thank you so much for joining us. Please help the channel to thrive by clicking or tapping that bell notification symbol. If you are a member or a patron, I truly appreciate all your support. If you would like to work with me directly, please read my testimonials below. Even if you're not quite ready to book a reading now, you'll get a greater feel for what or how I work. Also, if you go to my website at patrickarundell.com, you can download a free natal chart with a stunning interpretation. Also enjoy the 3-card tarot. I really think it's fantastic. I use it myself. And finally, you can sign up for your free daily horoscope fired to your device each morning. That's patrickarundell.com. Please stay with me as I go through each of the zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces. So Aries, your week commencing the 11th of August forecast begins with your ruler Mars, asking you to assert your boundaries. But finding your voice might not be quite so easy because of Saturn and Neptune in your sign, which may trim back a little bit your energy, your vitality, or even perhaps a little bit your will. Mercury going direct is going to help that, especially if you're wanting to push forwards with a creative plan which has been in some ways delayed. Your love life may have also been at times blighted by Mercury's retrograde. There may have been changes of plan, maybe a date didn't quite go as you hoped. Things can flow forwards a little better, but Mercury is in an opposition with Pluto. So I think Pluto and the full moon of last week are asking you to think very carefully about what you want from your future. So although this week will provide some opportunities and also perhaps some challenges, as long as you know where you're heading, the direction of travel, that's going to make it a lot easier for you to navigate the way forwards. Now there is, on Tuesday, that glorious lineup of Venus, Jupiter and Sirius. If you'd like to know more about this, please check out my inside track detailed video by clicking on the link within this one. But essentially you could find yourself feeling quite nostalgic, particularly for family members, getting together with people you feel very comfortable with. You may even plan a reunion based on this particular energy. If you are looking to expand your family, this can also be very, very helpful. Now later in the week, the clashes between Mercury, Pluto and Mars and Saturn and Neptune do start to ease, and I think that can help you to gain more momentum. So it's really down to you, Aries, what you're wanting. And if you do come up against some opposition or some tests or things that you need to navigate that require patience, you can do it, and your sense of humour, I feel, will help you along the way with Mercury going direct, because it's a great deflection. If someone is being awkward and a little bit stubborn and intransigent, that's a great way to deflect. But Mars is also saying to you that if you feel very strongly about a relationship issue, Don't bend too much if you feel someone's not meeting you halfway. So Taurus, your week commencing the 11th of August forecast sees Mercury go direct on Monday. If there have been some cross wires with family members recently, or something you've wanted to achieve in terms of where you live, or a repair or an upgrade has been delayed because perhaps a contractor proved to be unreliable, or perhaps your own feelings have been spinning around your mind a little bit, and that has created some uncertainty, that wouldn't be a complete surprise. Now, the full moon that occurred at the end of last week is still asking you to find a balance between what you're wanting to achieve in the wider world and what works for you at a more personal, even emotional level. But the combination of your ruler Venus, Jupiter, the planet of fortune, and the fixed star Sirius on Tuesday gives you a glorious chance to express yourself with great aplomb. Someone may find what you say very, very interesting. But equally, if you are chatting to someone and it's a more flirty situation, that can also be very exciting. The chemistry can be really quite palpable. But there is still a very powerful standoff between Mars and Saturn and Neptune. And if your physical vitality has been a little bit low, I think having some kind of diversion this week will actually be very good for you. Now, next week, the Sun's going to be moving into a much more energized part of your chart. So you've got that to look forward to. But if anything has felt a little bit stuck, if you take the opportunity, you may find that someone's much more receptive to what you have to say. So Gemini, your week commencing the 11th of August forecast begins with your ruler Mercury stationing direct. If over the last few weeks there have been some issues around text messages or emails or technology snags, wouldn't be a complete surprise, but Mercury retrogrades also give us a chance to direct more attention to things that need upgrading, particularly things like software. So you may have actually used it to your advantage. But with the energy of the full moon in mind, that continues to cascade into this week. There's something I feel that you're very invested in, very enthusiastic about. Might be a holiday, it might be a business idea, it could be to do with technology or publishing, but your philosophies may come into contact with someone who sees things actually very differently to you this week, and you may encounter someone who's not as cooperative and collaborative as you would like because of Saturn and Neptune in an opposition still to Mars through the first half of this week. Now, you could have some outright good financial fortune on Tuesday with the alliance of Venus, Jupiter and Sirius. So all of that is literally a stellar lineup of possibility. But if you do encounter that person who's not really getting it in the way you want, charm could be a helpful asset. Very often you fall back on your cerebral abilities or your sense of humour or your flex, and it makes it hard for people to keep up with you. But you know, if you do just really lay it on a little bit with a trowel, it could be quite effective. One thing I would say is if you have been on a diet recently, whatever you're on a diet from, you may find that particular thing quite hard to resist. Because with Venus, Jupiter and Sirius all together in your second house, indulging your senses could be very pleasant indeed. But if you are getting to know someone where the spark between you, particularly in sharing ideas, is very strong, but you're also drawn to them in a more intimate way, it could get a lot more passionate too. So Cancer, your week commencing the 11th of August forecast is going to see your personal identity given a big boost with the combination of Venus, Jupiter and also Sirius all gathering together in your sign at 14 degrees. If you have a birthday between the 1st and the 7th of July, this is going to burgeon your sense of self a lot. It can give you more self-assurance. It's also a great time for all Cancer people to think about having a glamorous makeover in some ways, or to think about your individual creative talents and how you can manifest your soul energies in a more meaningful manner. Now, there are also some competing influences. Mercury goes direct on Monday, but is in a bit of a testing standoff with Pluto through to the middle of the week. Maybe it's within yourself that you're having some kind of conversation about what to do about a situation that may require some commitment. You do get some rewards, but it doesn't really help you to express yourself in the way that you really want. Also, in terms of professional situations, if there is a lot of loading on your shoulders, but you're not really feeling it, that can continue to be something that occupies your thinking. Now, as the week goes on, some of those more testing energies will just ease off a little bit, and hopefully that dazzling alliance can help you to find the space in your thinking and emotions to really take a step forwards and consider what you really want. But I think essentially balancing the books in terms of practicalities needs to work with where you feel most invested in an emotional or spiritual way. And if there is a disconnect, that's where the big decision may be needed. And I've been saying this for some while because of Jupiter's clash earlier in the summer with Saturn. But if you're not really happy professionally, this may be a time when you're drawn towards self-employment, doing something that's more artistic, turning something that perhaps you've enjoyed as a hobby, such as crafting, in something that gives you a kind of income. So essentially, you have a great chance to invest in what makes you unique and individual, but at the same time, if that doesn't quite work with what you need to bring in to maintain the bills, that could create something of an inner conflict. Only you can really decide which way to go with this, but if your finances and professional situation are pretty good, do enjoy the extra attention that you're going to garner this week. So Leo, your week commencing the 11th of August forecast is going to see the sun in the middle of the week make its way into the third decan of your sign, and that's subruled by Mars, the planet of passion, which starts this week in an opposition still to the retreating Saturn and Neptune. That opposition may have created some frustration, particularly where your ideas don't appear to be meshing with someone else. With Mercury having been retrograde in your sign, also that may have slowed things down. Now you can start to gain traction this week, and that energy of the sun will also give you more assertion. But just be aware that when it comes to relationship matters, particularly if you're really trying very hard around something that means a lot to you as an individual, and you feel that partners, family members are not really buying in or being very supportive, it can give you a lot of food for thought. One of the things it can do on Tuesday, the combination between Venus, Jupiter and Sirius, is see you very, very nostalgic for someone who's no longer with us. That person may in some ways have been an inspiration to you, but it may also have been someone you used to be involved with. So some Leos could feel really quite drawn towards an old flame, perhaps checking out their profile on social media and so on. Would it be any different if you met up again? That depends on the unique circumstances. But equally, the combination of Venus, Jupiter and Sirius in your 12th house could in a way give you a nudge towards thinking, might you be better separating from something that isn't really giving you the support and the nourishment that you feel you really deserve. So it's an interesting week. On one hand, the sun moving into that third decan can certainly give you more impetus, drive and desire, but the opposition between Saturn and Mars in particular, but also Mercury and Pluto, suggests that there still can be a lot of potential for frustration right at the start of this week. But stick with it. But when it comes to those relationship vibes, I really do feel that you're looking for a quieter voice, someone who's more supportive and nurturing and understands the subtext of your situation without it being so much of a drama. So Virgo, your week commencing the 11th of August forecast suggests that recently you may have had quite a bit of doubt about certain people, certain connections. Not everybody may have been quite as much in touch as you would have liked. That could have fed into your sense of confidence. You may have withdrawn a little bit. Now, the combination of Venus, Jupiter and Sirius on Tuesday could bring some really warm blessings. If you do venture out, it may not usually be your thing midweek, but if you do, you could have a really fabulous time. Very jolly, very heartwarming. But I also feel it is possible that you're continuing to think about who's in your corner and who is not. Your ruler Mercury does go direct on Monday, but it does retain its location for now in a more sheltered, perhaps even a little bit of a worrisome location. And it's also in an opposition with Pluto. Work stress won't be good for you either this week. So one of the great things you can do with that Venus, Jupiter, Sirius conjunction is give yourself permission to have a day off. Perhaps enjoy a duvet day. If you are someone who's more outgoing, get together with those people and have a complete break away from some of the deep thinking you've been doing recently, because I do feel it could be very uplifting for you. So Libra, your week commencing the 11th of August forecast sees Mercury, the planet which influences communication, go direct in the part of your chart to do with friendship, sociability, long-term plans and highest hopes. What's significant here is being an air sign. That resonates well for you. Mercury rules your fellow air sign of Gemini, where of course Uranus is linking back to Mars in your sign and also Pluto. So that ground air trine is still operating, but something that may have been a bit delayed can move forwards. Will it move forwards quite as quickly as you would like? That's a moot point because of Saturn and Neptune in opposition to the aforementioned Mars. Also, Mercury may go direct, but goes face to face with Pluto. So it's quite complex. What does this all mean? Well, I feel that you can take a step forwards. You can collaborate with others. You have a gift for that, but it's your natural appreciation of diplomacy which really will come into the fore this week, with the combination of your ruler Venus, Jupiter and Sirius, the fixed star, on Tuesday. If you're applying for a job, doing a presentation, or you've been in a negotiation that's been ongoing for some while, good news can finally come through. But it might not be exactly what you want. And for us all this week, I do feel we are going to need to flex. If we're too stuck, that can create resistance, and therefore that can create a lot of tension. So I feel that your appreciation of give and take is really strong, but the other part of that is you feel that you've given quite a lot in recent years, and that's led you to be more determined to set your boundary and not be quite as amenable to others, because you feel then you end up getting a little bit taken for granted. But it's all about picking the right strategy for the right situation, and I wouldn't be too firm on something which actually will benefit from letting go a little bit, and in some ways trusting the process, which is difficult for us all at times, but particularly for air signs that like to think about things so much. And also for your sign, sometimes you can be a little bit indecisive, but this is a week that might not quite get to where you want in the first half of it as rapidly as ideal, but actually it could end up better than you might expect right at the start of the week. So Scorpio, your week commencing the 11th of August sees the rays of last week's full moon still pulsing into this week. Balancing home and work could be the issue, but that also suggests that with the glorious alliance between Venus, Jupiter and Sirius, which can be very, very fortunate on Tuesday, it's the ideal time to book a holiday, do something completely spontaneous, off the cuff. Give yourself permission to have a change. Remember the old saying, it's as good as a rest. Because with Mercury having been tracking backwards in the part of your chart to do with your goals and ambitions, something you've been waiting to hear news on may have been quite exasperating. Ironically, you could hear about it this week, and by the end of the week, although Mars is still tucked up in a very awkward part of your chart, which could have quite the impact on your emotions in its opposition to Saturn and Neptune. In fact, your emotional energy could feed into your physical vitality in quite a direct way. And particularly if you have got a lot on in terms of supporting people at home, in the family, or with your work. So all the more reason to create a diversion, whether it's go to see a film, watch a band, put a nice film on, just get out and about. Doing something differently can really be very good for you. Now, if you do meet someone romantically, and it does happen to be someone who does have similar values to you, a similar philosophy, but comes from a different background, do stay very open to it, because it could bring you some genuine fortune into your life. So Sagittarius, your week commencing the 11th of August suggests if you've been waiting for the green light on some travel plans, a contractual matter, some information, or perhaps you've applied to a college of higher education, news can come soon. Will it come in the first half of this week? Perhaps, perhaps not, but it will come soon. What you're also going to see this week is the sun moves into the most assertive part of its journey through the sign of Leo. If you're not particularly happy in your professional situation, just before the sun makes its way to the top of your chart next week, you may start to feel a bit more restless, and that could see you gaining a lot more information, which is something you have a natural appreciation of. However, Tuesday is really unique. In fact, it's unique not just in this particular week. The alliance between Venus and Jupiter hasn't happened in Cancer for 23 years. And for you, it does mean that if you're getting to know someone and it's going well, and you do have a good flow between you, you feel very comfortable, you could get a lot closer. There also could be a genuine slice of good fortune. It may be a payout on something that you've been waiting to hear news on. It could be that a business idea you've got starts to really pay dividends. But also, it may be that someone you're already involved with, they have some good fortune too, because the 8th house can be about shared resources. But because Mars is in the part of your chart to do with your long-term plan, if there are certain people that still aren't quite getting what you want to achieve, there is the chance that you're going to go for that route which grants you a little bit more independence. So this week has a bit of a dichotomy. You could get much closer to one person, or have some real fortune with someone, or you may want to have more independence and space, and it really depends on your exact situation how this will play out. So Capricorn, your week commencing the 11th of August forecast has a number of different possibilities. Mars, the planet of action but of assertion, continues to scud his way across the most visible part of your chart. That's pushing you to take charge of situations, be more assertive. There may be part of you that's a bit resistant to doing that, or it could be someone close to you is resistant to the leadership you're wanting to show. There could also be a lot of conversation still about who does and contributes what from a financial viewpoint. However, if you have been waiting for some news, perhaps on a payout, a deal to do with a mortgage, pension, that news can come through. But if we go back to when Jupiter, the planet of possibilities, moved into Cancer, obviously the next year will give you the chance to forge some positive alliances with Jupiter there. But if you recall, Jupiter clashed with your ruler Saturn on the 15th of June. So it hasn't necessarily been all easy going in terms of your connections. Maybe at times you felt a bit lower in energy, or a bit dispirited because people haven't been as tuned into you as you would like. But actually on Tuesday, it's one of the best moments of the year for relationships. So if something isn't quite working, if someone isn't quite getting it, isn't collaborating, isn't quite seeing what you're trying to achieve, do you know the best way to proceed with that Venus-Jupiter-Sirius conjunction is to choose your words very carefully and to be as balanced and also as diplomatic as possible, because do you know that probably will work a lot better than getting exasperated and pushing even harder for them to adhere to exactly what you want. Now, if you don't have all that politics going around you at the moment and you do meet someone for the first time and there is that initial attraction, it could be a relationship genuinely which can bring some really good fortune to your world, or it could just always in some way or another bring some uplift or some sweet moments in your future. So Aquarius, your week commencing the 11th of August forecast could see you with a bit of a dilemma, to be honest. I know Mercury goes direct on Monday. That's obviously helpful, but the energy of the full moon last week was encouraging you to focus on what you needed to do for you, the individual, and that need to be authentic is strengthened by the role of Pluto linking with your modern ruler Uranus, but also with Mars, so you could feel a bit uncompromising. So although Mercury goes direct, you're not necessarily going to want to instantly bend to what other people want from you, and why should you? Also, towards the end of this week, the Sun makes its way into its most assertive part of its journey through Leo, sub-ruled in the third decan by Mars, and that also can just see you be braver around your boundaries on what you will or won't agree to. So this week can still have some complexities, but at the heart of it there is also some possibilities, with the glorious link between Venus, Jupiter and Sirius. If there is someone that you know through your everyday life, at the gym, at work, travelling, the supermarket, that you just seem to have a glow with whenever you see them, or you could encounter someone for the first time in these kind of ordinary situations, it could be really significant. Also, in a personal relationship, doing a bit more around the domestic chores, being a bit more sacrificing to support a colleague might also be something you gain from ultimately, but I do think it's important to stick with what you feel very strongly about in terms of your relationship situation. We can all agree to be, and we can all be more agreeable, but if we're giving away our power, it will diminish our sense of identity, and that's really the nub of what this week is about for you. So Pisces, your week commencing the 11th of August forecast sees that dazzling conjunction between your ruler Jupiter, Venus, and also the fixed star Sirius on Tuesday. This can be genuinely fortunate, but for you in the 5th house, where it can see you gain is perhaps in a social dimension, even romantically, but also because I know that a lot of Pisces people are very creative. If you have been finding in terms of your work or professional situation recently that it's very, very demanding, not a lot of gratitude for what you do, and perhaps someone's being quite picky, hypercritical, with Mercury going direct on Monday, I feel that can help to a degree, but if you still feel slightly undervalued, perhaps underpaid, the opposition between Mars, Saturn and Neptune can still show up in terms of your frustration. But think about the assets you've got, the talents. There can often be a vast array of things that Pisces people are gifted at, whether it's art, whether it's to do with being a maker, whether it's to do with film, whether it is to do with music or catering. Your talents perhaps need to be re-evaluated, and you have a chance to shine beautifully on Tuesday. So if something or someone is making you miserable, get into the thing that really does feed your soul, because that's really, really important. And if you are lucky enough to be out and about and available and would like to meet someone, whether it's in a friendly, social way or in a more romantic way, the wonderful connection of Jupiter, your ruler, and Venus, which is exalted in your sign, in your 5th house, could have genuinely a real stroke of luck attached to it. They haven't come into a conjunction in Cancer, your sister water sign, since 2002, so it's 23 years. And with the North Node, which is also very karmic, feeding into them from your sign, Listen to your hunches if there's someone who's interested in you at the moment, but also listen to your hunches if you don't feel fulfilled in what you're doing on a daily practical basis, and ask yourself what steps you could take to change it so you can express yourself in a more fulsome way.